February 26th, 2022. That was the day Washington and Brussels reached for what some people have called the financial nuclear trigger.
They froze about $300 billion of Russia's foreign reserves and, kicked their biggest banks off SWIFT.
And on TV, the message was just so clear. Game over for Russia. This was it, the fatal blow.
But here's the thing almost no one was really talking about. That single act, that ultimate financial weapon, it also started a countdown on the American financial order itself.
Right. And if you care at all about your savings or even just global stability, you have to understand the lesson that every single country learned in that moment.
And that lesson was simple. Your central bank reserves are not actually yours if they live inside our system.
Exactly. So the big question we're going to unpack is, what does the world do when it can no longer trust the world's currency?
We're going to look at the architecture of that power, trace this repeating historical pattern of decline, and map out the exact alternatives, the exit doors that countries are building right now.
Okay, so let's get into that architecture. It all starts with SWIFT. I think a lot of people have heard the name, but what is it really?
It's a great question because there's a huge misconception. SWIFT is not a bank. It doesn't hold or move any money itself.
Okay, so it's not where the money is?
Not at all. Think of it more like the nervous system of global finance. It's a secure messaging platform. It connects, over 11,000 banks across the world?
Just sending instructions back and forth.
Precisely. It signals trillions of dollars in payments every single day. If a bank in Tokyo wants to pay a bank in Frankfurt, SWIFT carries the message.
But then where's the leverage? I mean, if it's just a messaging system, how can the U.S. control it?
The leverage is the dollar. See, SWIFT is technically a neutral cooperative based in Belgium, but the vast majority of international trade is done in U.S. dollars.
Right.
And every one of those dollar transactions, at some point, has to be settled through a correspondent bank in the U.S., mostly in New York.
So that's the choke point. You control the dollar clearing, you control the network.
You control the network. And that control is the foundation of what's called the Exorbitant Privilege.
Explain that. What is that privilege?
It's the ultimate free lunch. It means the U.S. can borrow at incredibly low interest rates because everyone needs its currency. And it can pay for all its imports in a currency it literally just prints.
It's a financial superpower no other country has.
Right. But the cost of turning that superpower into a weapon, as we saw in 2022, is you destroy the trust that makes the whole thing work.
And freezing $300 billion of a G20 nation's reserves, that was just unprecedented. It sent a shockwave everywhere.
Instantly. The realization that spread through every capital city from Riyadh to Brasilia was, wait a minute. If they can do this to Russia over a policy dispute,
they can do it to us.
They can do it to anyone. And that is the moment the weapon starts to backfire.
What's so fascinating is this isn't a new story. We've seen this exact pattern play out before. There's a 5-stage cycle that just keeps repeating.
It's almost like clockwork. Stage 1, a dominant power controls the system. Stage 2, that power weaponizes the system.
Stage 3, the targets start to build alternatives.
Then stage 4, a lot of neutral countries start to hedge their bets. They get nervous. And finally, stage 5, the weapon loses its power and the whole system erodes.
So let's go back. Case study number 1, the British pound, 1914.
Before World War I, the pound was the dollar of its day. It was everything. It accounted for, I think, around 65% of all global reserves.
Unquestioned dominance.
Totally.
Yeah.
But then in August 1914, war breaks out and Britain immediately weaponizes the system. They passed something called the Trading with the Enemy Act and just froze all German assets across the empire.
And I'm sure in the short term, that was very effective.
Of course. But the long-term cost was catastrophic. Imagine you're a neutral country at the time and you're watching this. You suddenly realize your money held in London isn't safe. It's conditional on British approval.
So you start quietly moving it somewhere else?
You start moving it to New York. It wasn't a collapse overnight. It was a slow bleed. But look at the timeline. It took exactly 30 years from the 1914 weaponization to the 1944 Bretton Woods Agreement.
When the dollar officially took over. 30 years. That's incredible.
And we saw the pattern repeat. 1979, the Iranian hostage crisis. President Carter freezes $12 billion in Iranian assets.
A smaller scale, but the same principle.
Exactly the same. And the lesson learned by OPEC, by the entire developing world, was that your dollar reserves could be frozen by one presidential order. No trial, no due process.
It's gone.
So what do? Throughout the 80s and 90s, they diversified. The dollar share of their reserves dropped from about 85% to 70%. They started buying more gold, more other currencies, hedging.
Which brings us to Russia, but back in 2014. After Crimea, the U.S. put on sanctions, but they held back from the full SWIFT cutoff.
And with hindsight, that was a huge strategic mistake. It was like a warning shot that gave the target time to prepare.
They gave Russia 8 years?
8 years to get ready. And they did. Russia slashed its U.S. Treasury holdings from over $130 billion to almost nothing, just $2 billion. They doubled their gold reserves. And they built their own SWIFT alternative, SPFS.
And that preparation is why they survived the 2022 sanctions.
It's the difference between collapse and survival. And that survival is what kicked off stage 3 in a major way: evasion.
Russia proved a huge economy could actually function outside the Western system. They rerouted trade. They settled in yuan, rupees, rubles.
By 2024, something like 40% of their trade was happening completely without dollars or euros.
Which brings us to where we are right now, stage 4, the hedging phase, where dozens of other countries are watching this and thinking, we need an exit plan too.
This is the most critical stage. Look at China. They've been aggressively de-dollarizing. Their holdings of U.S. treasuries are down from a peak of $1.3 trillion to, around $775 billion now.
So where is that $500 billion going?
A lot of it's going into gold. Central banks, not just China's, bought over 1,000 tons of gold in 2022 and then again in 2023. The highest sustained buying since the 1970s.
Because you can't freeze gold bars in a vault in Beijing.
You cannot sanction it. It's the ultimate neutral reserve asset. And we're also seeing a direct challenge to the petrodollar.
Yeah, this is huge. For 50 years, oil has been priced in dollars.
But now Saudi Arabia, a key U.S. ally, is openly selling oil to China and accepting Chinese yuan as payment. The UAE and India are settling trade in their own currencies. The monopoly is cracking.
And this is all being coordinated in a way through the BRICS group.
Yes, and the group has expanded. It now includes major energy producers like Saudi Arabia and the UAE. They represent a massive slice of the global economy, and they're actively developing alternatives.
So let's talk about those alternatives, the actual technology designed to bypass the dollar system.
Okay, there are two big ones to watch that are parallel to SWIFT. First is China's system, CIPS, cross-border interbank payment system.
How big is that?
Well, it's still smaller than SWIFT, but its growth is explosive. It processed about $17 trillion in 2023, but it's on track to do nearly $25 trillion in 2024. Its volume is doubling in just a few years.
And then you have Russia's SPFS.
Right. It was built as a domestic backup, but now it connects over 550 institutions globally. So you have these two parallel tracks being built.
But the real game changer, from what I've read, seems to be central bank digital currencies, CBDCs.
That's the one. China with its ECNY, Russia with the digital ruble. This is the technology that can make the entire New York clearing system irrelevant.
How does it bypass the choke point?
Because it allows for direct peer-to-peer settlement between central banks. You don't need an intermediary. A digital yuan can be sent directly from the People's Bank of China to, say, the Central Bank of the UAE.
With no stop in New York.
No stop in New York, no exposure to U.S. sanctions. China has a massive first-mover advantage here, and they're trying to set the global standard for this new technology.
And all of this leads to the final stage, stage 5, the decline. The data on this is pretty stark.
It really is.
Yeah.
You know, look at the share of global reserves. The dollar fell from 71% in 1999 to 58% today. That's a 25-year low.
But the trade data is what really caught my eye.
The trade data is the shocker. The dollar share of global trade invoicing fell from 73% in 2022 to around 58% by 2024.
Wait, say that again? A 15 percentage point drop in 2 years.
In 2 years. That is not a slow, gentle decline. That is an acceleration. That's fear driving countries to find alternatives that are now technologically viable.
So that 30-year timeline for the British pound, it's not going to take that long this time.
No way. Technology speeds everything up. CIPS can scale. CBDCs can be adopted almost instantly. The consensus now is that the dollar loses its truly dominant status, maybe falling to a 35 or 40% share in the next 15 to 25 years.
Sometime between, say, 2037 and 2047, and that's the so what? What does that mean for the U.S.?
It means the end of the exorbitant privilege. The U.S. loses the ability to run these massive deficits, to borrow trillions at low rates, because the world just won't need to stockpile as many of our bonds.
And for the average American, what does that look like?
It looks like much higher interest rates. It means the government is forced to actually balance its budget, and the American standard of living, which relies so much on importing more than we export, well, that becomes unsustainable. The free lunch is over.
So the tactical success of using the SWIFT weapon against Russia, it came at this enormous strategic cost.
The destruction of global financial trust. The world is building these alternatives, not because they're necessarily better, but simply because they are seen as safer from being used as a weapon.
We've seen this five-stage pattern play out over and over, but this time, with digital currencies and the sheer speed of communication, this monetary transition is happening on an accelerated timeline. It's already in motion.
Which leaves us with the real question for the next decade. It's not if the dollar's role will shrink, it's can the U.S. maintain its global power when it can no longer finance its debts by printing the one currency the rest of the world has to have? That's the ultimate price of weaponizing finance.